Good evening. Welcome into this Wednesday night edition of Newsmax Prime. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Of prime interest tonight, pole position. Donald Trump still dominates, this time on top in an exclusive Newsmax poll, this one focusing on the southern United States. More on that later. First, Hillary in the hot seat. Reports today that the FBI has begun looking into the security of Hillary Rodham Clinton's private email server. This comes after the Bureau contacted Mrs. Clinton's attorney last week about the security of a thumb drive in his possession. That thumb drive has copies of work emails Mrs. Clinton sent while Secretary of State. Yesterday, author Edward Klein told us that the legal scrutiny is very much underway for the Democrat frontrunner.
They feel that they're in a kind of a race against time. Which is going to come first? Is she going to be able to sew up the nomination by just throwing more money, more organization at the primaries so that she is unbeatable? Or will a criminal indictment come down from the Justice Department before that fact? And they're very concerned about which is going to come first.
For more on this story, I'm pleased to be joined on the anchor desk by Miranda Kahn, and joining us via Skype from Martha's Vineyard, Alan Dershowitz, professor of law at Harvard Law School and author of the new ebook, The Case Against the Iran Deal. How can we now stop Iran from getting nukes? And Alan, we're going to get to that a bit later, but first we need to talk about what is happening with Hillary. A staffer from her 2008 campaign initially set up this private server, we understand. That same staffer later went on to work for the State Department in the IT department. Can something like this factor into a possible indictment?
There can't be any possible indictment here because everything that Hillary Clinton did, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, was legal at the time she did it. You can't change the rules. There was no rule at the time she was Secretary of State prohibiting her from using her private email, and none of the material that she sent or received was classified at the time. Now they're reclassifying some of it, and they're saying, look, we learned a lesson. From now on, we shouldn't have private email servers. But at the time she did it, what she was doing was perfectly legal. So there's no realistic risk of any criminal indictment here. I think that's just a lot of smoke and there's no fire.
So is there any possibility, though, Alan, that there could be some other legal ramifications ahead for her if the FBI finds her server could have easily been compromised?
Well, I think she could be criticized. Her judgment can be challenged. And the FBI would probably want to make sure it didn't happen again. But we have an ex post facto clause in our Constitution. It's not even in the Bill of Rights. It's in the body of the Constitution itself, which prohibits anybody from being punished for conduct that was lawful at the time they engaged in the conduct. You can't, after the fact, ex post facto, change the rules for criminal purposes. You can change them for purposes of criticizing judgment. But as an expert in criminal law for over 50 years, I'm very, very confident that there really can't be any plausible indictment, if I'm right, that everything she did was legal at the time she did it.
Well, Alan, Hillary last spoke out against the potential criminal investigation into her emails late last month. Let's listen to what she said then and then get your reaction to her comments.
It's because there have been a lot of inaccuracies. We are all accountable to the American people to get the facts right, and I will do my part.
So she's saying there are inaccuracies in the investigation, even at one point joking the summer heat has gotten to people. I'm just curious about this, Alan, because when we had General Petraeus in his situation and he was basically hung out to dry, again, what is the difference for Hillary and her legal team in this situation?
Well, the difference is night and day. What Petraeus did was to reveal information that was classified at the time he revealed it. There was no retroactive classification. I recently had a case in the Court of Appeals where the same thing was attempted against my client. They tried to retroactively apply some regulations of the Defense Department to him for conduct that occurred before the regulations were changed. And the courts universally strike that down, and they say you cannot punish somebody for conduct that was lawful at the time it occurred. Of course, if she had disclosed information that was then classified, or if she had violated the rules of the State Department as they existed at the time, surely there might be some legal ramifications. But under these circumstances, I think the issue is political. It's an issue of judgment, but I don't think there are any legal issues here. I understand why the FBI is in the case. They want to make sure that whatever security issues may have existed are no longer a problem. And, you know, God bless them for doing that. Nobody wants the security of the United States in any way endangered, and we have to have rules that prohibit this in the future.
And speaking of the security of the United States, let's talk about this Iran deal. The president was at American University earlier today making the case for the controversial deal. Let's take a listen, and we want to get your reaction on the back end.
So to friends of Israel and to the Israeli people, I say this: a nuclear-armed Iran is far more dangerous to Israel, to America, and to the world than an Iran that benefits from sanctions relief.
Alan, do you agree with what the president had to say?
I have no idea what he's talking about. That was a statement that seemed internally contradictory. Of course, a nuclear-armed Iran is dangerous to America, to Israel, to the world. We who object to the deal object because this deal guarantees that Iran will obtain nuclear weapons in 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, or 15 years. What I want to hear the president say is that this deal includes the preliminary statement. The preliminary statement to the deal says categorically, Iran reaffirms that it will never, under any circumstances, seek to obtain nuclear weapons. The president should say that that's part of the deal. And if Iran ever violates that, the military option remains on the table. He hasn't done that. What he said is this is a 10-year deal. He's changed his policy. He initially said this was we would never agree to containment. Now he's agreed to containment and postponement. In my book, The Case Against the Iran Deal, I document statements that he made prior to his reelection, statements he made after his reelection. He's changed the deal. He's now facilitating Iran, legitimating Iran getting nuclear weapons. So I agree with what he said, that a nuclear-armed Iran is a terrible threat. But why then did he allow Iran to develop nuclear weapons after the deal expires? Why does he have an inspection regime that allows Iran to move around any material in 24 days? That's an eternity when it comes to hiding, cheating. So I agree with the end of the deal, the goal, but not with the means that he used to achieve it.
And yet, Alan, today he insists that there are measures that will prevent Iran from cheating, that we can catch them. 20 seconds for your response to that.
I wish he were right, but the evidence by nuclear scientists is to the contrary. The evidence by many nuclear scientists, many liberal Democrats like me, many people who are opposed to the Iraq war, and he can't just continue the name-calling, saying that the opponents are all warmongers, Republicans who led us into war against Iraq. He has to take into account that many Democrats, many supporters of his, are opposed to this deal, and he has to answer the hard questions. He did not do that today.
Alan Dershowitz, we thank you so much for your time and your insights, both on the possible FBI investigation and the Iran deal. Still to come, the results of an exclusive Newsmax poll. Pollster Matt Lowry will give us the specifics. Later, President Obama spoke about the Iran nuclear deal again today. But what would a President Walker do? Governor Scott Walker with the answer in my exclusive one-on-one interview. But first, the FBI warns military families in Colorado and Wyoming about their safety amid concerns about just who is watching them. Ron Hosko and Jim Hansen have details when Newsmax Prime continues.